Hello, and welcome to HR PROPEL, the Human Resource Administration's podcast program. Hello, my name is Al Howell, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner for HRA, and I'd like to welcome our listeners to Season 3, Episode 1 of HR PROPEL. And to kick off our new season, what better topic than to start off with than employee learning and development? So joining us today is Conrad Norman, our Senior Manager of Learning and Organizational Development for HRA. And Conrad is a facilitator of a quarterly training event that's available to state HR professionals, and it's called the Quarterly State HR Training. Or, of course, we have to have an acronym, so our acronym for this program is QSHRT. And so today we'll be talking with Conrad about QSHRT. So, Conrad, welcome again to HR PROPEL.
Well, thank you, Al. I say, man, what an exciting intro.
Yeah. Well, this is an exciting
wow,
topic.
what else?
Yeah.
What better topic? I say, all right, let's. Yeah, it's great to be back again. So, let's talk about QSHRT.
Okay. And for those who may not know, what exactly is QSHRT? What is QSHRT?
Okay. And I know you just briefly mentioned it from an acronym perspective, but if I could, as part of answering that question, what is QSHRT? Any opportunity for us to just kind of remind folks out there, for those that may be tuning in, and Al, certainly you know this, that HRA's mission, or kind of what we sometimes refer to as our tagline, is to lead, collaborate, and empower our enterprise agency clients. And why? So they can be successful and deliver on their mission. And one of the ways that HRA strives to do that is through providing, educational and developmental programs. QSHRT, which, as Al mentioned a moment ago, stands for Quarterly State Human Resources Training, is one of those programs. And what QSHRT is essentially an orientation type event that's primarily designed for HR human resources professionals across the state of Georgia, those that may be either new to working for the state of Georgia in some type of HR capacity, or they simply may be new to some type of HR role within a state of Georgia agency or function.
And kind of going back to something you mentioned in terms of who can attend a program. So this could be someone who is a newbie, so to speak, to state HR, but I may be a seasoned HR professional, and I also could attend QSHRT.
Anybody not only can attend QSHRT, but we encourage anybody and everybody that either has an interest or hopefully has come across some favorable word of mouth and has an interest, we more than welcome.
Okay. And what are some of the topics that are covered in QSHRT?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that QSHRT provides, and if I had to kind of just summarize it in general without getting too deep into particulars, I'd say there are kind of three buckets of kind of what QSHRT entails. The first one, because obviously we're bringing folks together from all these different, state agencies, and they own kind of, have their own little world depending on what agency. So one bucket would be we're bringing everybody together and providing some additional information, some resources, as well as developmental opportunities that focus on kind of, quote, the big picture, or to help those within that become part of QSHRT answer the question, kind of where do I fit in the big picture? And we provide information that kind of a broad view of what may be going on across the entire state from an HR perspective. The second is where we tend to get really into a lot of the nuts and the bolts, where we get into what one might call, state HR programs, specific policies, and things like that. And then the third would be what I call kind of developmental, where we actually even provide many workshops on, relevant topics at that time, because we don't want to be stagnant and just, keep the same topic forever. We want the information to be relative. But at a more specific level, and this isn't a full list, but it would cover things like simply, we provide folks kind of an org chart of the entire state of Georgia showing all agencies and kind of how all that fits together. We talk about the recent enterprise workforce summary report. So people can, even though we provide it, what tends to always happen is that when people are participating in QSHRT and you kind of ask them, hey, some of you may have already seen this. Often nobody has seen it. So it ends up, being a really good source of information and great discussion among the participants. But, we talk about classification, compensation. We get into specific state HR programs, like one that we get a lot of feedback about is the state substance abuse program, flexible benefit resources, HR, legal information, E-Verify, federal laws, things of that nature. And we deliver all of that content through multimedia. We have video, we have, expert or subject matter expert presentations. There are also a variety of group exercises.
Okay. And it's obvious that some of the benefits of QSHRT is definitely learning and development. But what are some of the other benefits that someone could gain from participating or attending one of the QSHRT sessions?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd have to boil it down and somewhat of an echo of one of the points you just made a moment ago, but I would say one, in my mind, one key benefit for those that participate in QSHRT would be gaining valuable educational and developmental resources, many of which are just simply may not be aware that exist. And in order to really, I say the key benefit is improving the knowledge and skill, of HR professionals, because most of them come to QSHRT, as you mentioned earlier, some are new, some are not necessarily brand new, but our goal is to provide them information, tools, resources, as well as some, real-time development as part of the event so that when they go back to their respective agency, not only do we hope they had a favorable experience, but that they've also actually improved the knowledge and skills so that they can be more effective in their role within their agency. The second key benefit, I think QSHRT, in a sense, really helps us to build a stronger state of Georgia HR community. And by that, I can tell you, having, participated in, or as you mentioned, kind of facilitated a number of these, that we've seen firsthand that when QSHRT participants come together and they form new relationships and they get to know each other better, and in some cases share best practices, what's going on in their respective worlds, we build a more connected HR community across the state of Georgia. So I would say it would really, in my mind, really focus on those two key benefits.
Yeah, and I have to definitely agree with you about the building the HR community, because I would think that networking or getting to know others within the HR profession throughout the state would have to have a tremendous benefit, especially if I was brand new, in terms of HR. But there a lot has changed in the workplace due to COVID-19, especially in the area of learning. And I know there's been some changes to the QSHRT program. And tell us a little bit more about some of the changes that have recently occurred to the program.
Yeah, yeah. As you were making that statement, I was like, oh boy, have there been changes? You know, and right in the center of all of that, and this isn't limited to QSHRT, is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So something that was fairly common, particularly in the beginning when most of us were kind of what's the right phrase? I don't say held hostage, but we were
Close to it, yeah.
pretty much we were all in quarantine. I guess that's what it was called at that point. Many people were forced to take what may have been more traditional, methods, meaning face-to-face, classroom, whatever folks call different types of training or meetings, and whether you knew what you were doing or not, you got to go virtual. So one of the first things that I'd say has changed with QSHRT is from when QSHRT started some years back up until COVID-19, it was always we register folks from all across the state. They get in their cars. If they weren't local to Atlanta, they would drive a number of hours to Atlanta, and it was an in-person classroom instructor-led event. It was also an all-day event. So one of the first big changes was, in fact, a shift where we've now changed from what I just described, an in-person event, to an all-virtual event, which where we also use what I describe as a highly interactive webcast platform, and which includes a variety of what we call participant engagement tools and these really cool modern analytics that allows us to do more than just deliver content, but get a sense of the level of participation, engagement, and also some reporting capabilities. So really moving from in-person to all virtual is the first big change. The second, kind of related to that one, is also some of the efficiencies. And by that, I mean, I mentioned that folks in the past were getting in their cars, they were driving to Atlanta, so there was travel cost, there was additional time. And on average, when you take the typical drive time plus the full 8 hours of, instruction or presentations, where we are at this point with QSHRT is the entire event where we still feel very good that we're delivering the most relevant and quality content is now a total of 4.5 hours. And the way that that is now delivered, which we've gotten rave reviews over, is that is delivered in 3 90-minute blocks over the course of 3 days. So not only do you no longer have to leave, your county or your agency and drive to Atlanta, participating doesn't cause you to lose a full day, out of the office, and allows folks a lot more flexibility. And then third, with this, the changes that have happened and the fact that we're using this new technology platform, it allows us to actually capture the events and record them, including all of the participant interactions and breakout rooms, et cetera, for repeat or review playback, for those that have participated.
Wow, that's a lot of changes, a lot of good positive changes. And I know something we have found throughout HRA, providing that virtual format, we've actually seen an increase, in attendance in some of our programs. And one thing that you mentioned was about some of the reviews that you've gotten about the program. What is some of the feedback you'd like to share with us that you've received from people that have gone through the program?
Well, you actually started to touch on one of them as part of the comment you made a moment ago, and that is when we talk about that shift from the in-person to the virtual event, just to put things in context, I'll say roughly mid 2019. So we weren't quite at COVID yet, obviously,
Yeah.
but it was lurking. It was around the corner a few months thereafter. But when we go back just to say mid 2019, and I think of the last, I'll call it the last QSHRT that was delivered before COVID hit,
Mm-hmm.
we had a total of 25 people that were actually, registered. Um, and in general, the average number of participants was somewhere between 25, maybe all the way up to 35 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after we made decisions to move from an in-person to an all virtual event, the first virtual event that we delivered, first QSHRT virtual event we delivered in 2021, we had 128 people
Wow.
who were registered representing 32 state agencies. So
Mm-hmm.
while that's kind of a lot of detail and data, the feedback was simply, oh, wow, I can actually participate, pretty easily because now I don't have to drive, to Atlanta from Valdosta. I don't have to drive to Atlanta from Savannah. And guess what? It's only 90 minutes, a day, an hour and a half, over 3 days where I can still pretty much, have a normal work day, but
Mm-hmm.
also participate in that. So that was one bit of feedback we got, particularly from HR leaders, which is, thank God, we're so happy you did this because now more of our folks can participate. Something else that we also heard, and you alluded to this earlier, and I can't say I was shocked, but it always surprises me a little bit, and that is now that we have the analytics available as part of this new platform, we can not only just generalize, but we can be very specific about who's attending. And for example, within that group of 128 people,
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about newbies, as you call them, to HR, the state of Georgia, that represented only about 27% of the participants. What's really interesting is that we had, of that 128, 31%
Mm-hmm.
of the virtual participants had been with the state of Georgia 10 years or more. So, and then everything in between. So
Mm-hmm.
that, kind of helps us understand that this is a program that, based on really favorable feedback, not only works or is open to those that are new and veterans to the
Mm-hmm.
state, but seems to actually at the same time, prove to be a valuable experience, no matter really how long you've worked for the state of Georgia.
Right, and that's something that's definitely has come out in this conversation. Is it benefits everyone, whether you're new or whether again you're seasoned. This is a good program to go through. I can see where I may need a refresher, in some of these
Right.
topics, and so it'd be a good way to do that. But kind of wrap up things here, Conrad.
Sure.
If I'm interested in attending a QSHRT session, how can HR professionals register or participate in QSHRT?
Okay. Yeah. So first thing, as is customary, every time that we're preparing for a QSHRT event, we generally send out what I'll call a QSHRT event announcement or registration communication to all of the HR community leaders who then identify or select those, say, newer or veteran HR
Mm-hmm.
professionals to participate. And what they do is then provide that information to HRA, and we get everybody registered and so forth. But my broader suggestion, particularly to those that may be tuning in, to any HR professionals who
Mm-hmm.
might like to register for a future QSHRT event, let your HR leader know that you're interested and ask them to register you for QSHRT when that opportunity presents itself.
Okay. All right. Well, Conrad, thank you very much for being our guest today. It's always a pleasure to
My
have you
pleasure, sir.
join HR Propel, and best of luck on the upcoming QSHRT events. And as we close out today, I'd like to thank everyone who's listening, and stay tuned for our next installment of HR Propel.